Hi everybody. So in this assignment, what we're doing is we're putting together a collection of potential photographs that we're going to use to build our character in Milestone 3. And we'll take a look at everybody's photographs and see how they'll work in the assignment, in the character, and see, if there's anything we can do to, you know, um, make suggestions for the photographs. And a few things I'll be looking for is just will the photograph work in the character in terms of the quality of the photograph and the way it's been photographed, and we'll learn a lot about photographs from that process. The second thing I'll look for is does every part of your character have a photograph? And then I'm going to use the assignment requirements of having 5 photographs as a minimum, and that's a minimum. So if you had more parts for your character, you may just naturally have more photographs. But if you have just 5 parts for your character, which is fine. Characters don't necessarily need to have more than that. But I will ask you to then, maybe find some duplicate photographs. For example, if you have a watermelon, for example, and you just have 5 photographs, maybe you could find another example of a watermelon. That's a potential idea, just so that we can really. It's always good to have a few done a little more than the requirements ask you to do when you can. And the other thing we're going to be looking at with the photographs is just to make sure that they're by good quality. Do they have a high enough resolution? And what that means is, are there enough pixels in the photograph that will make it clear and crisp? And we want to avoid photographs. When photographs are too small, they get a little blurry and kind of pixelated. And in Photoshop, Photoshop is a wonderful program, but what it cannot do is add more pixels to an image. Well, it can actually technically do that, but so look, if you look here, can you see how this is actually, I can already tell this is really good photograph because it's very clear and has like a lot of, very, very clear details. And something to keep in mind about working with photographs, this is the very first thing that I ever learned when working with a photograph, is that if you take a photograph yourself, you are the person who has like the best original copy of that photograph, because whatever comes into your camera, that's the best the photograph will ever be in terms of the number of pixels. Now, of course, you can adjust the color and, do all kinds of really wonderful things, which we'll learn about later on in this class, about how you can modify a photograph to make it look better, but you can never add in a better quality photograph in terms of the pixels, because what you get when you take that photograph is the maximum amount of pixels that you'll ever have. So if you find a photograph on the internet, what people sometimes do for when they place something on the internet is they will downsize it. That also looks pretty good. They'll downsize it, they'll reduce the amount of pixels in Photoshop or another program for the purposes of it being on the web. Maybe it's easier to upload or download or view a web page, or they don't want to share their original image. There are all kinds of reasons for that. So you have to be careful when you, and as designers, we often do find photographs in on websites to use, stock photo sites, and we have to be mindful about whether the number of pixels is going to work for the project that we are applying it to, because we can never add in more pixels. We can't like make something better than what we get when we receive it in terms of the pixel size. And the pixel size does govern how clear and crisp it is and how you can modify it. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say here. I think there was one other thing I wanted to say, which I think I've forgotten now. Let's see if I can remember. Well, it'll probably come back to me later on when I start the critique. But oh yeah, the thing that I want you to all keep in mind too is, especially if you're somebody who's worked in Illustrator before, Illustrator and Photoshop are very different with regards to this particular aspect of resizing images. In Photoshop, when we work with photographs, you cannot just sort of make an image bigger and have the quality remain. For the reason I just explained, is that we have pixels that come from a camera and we can't add into them to make the image better. Whereas in Illustrator, if you're used to working in Illustrator and you work on drawings or logos or whatever, you know that you can resize any image any size you want. Like you could make it a billboard size or the size to go on an airplane because it's mathematically created. You know, you are creating the illustration directly in Illustrator mathematically with vectors. So that's the big difference here that you have to remember, is that Photoshop cannot do that because you know, photographs are really more limited. They're almost like a painting, you could say, you know, where they are really more of a traditional media where we can't, you know, they get translated digitally, but they really come from that same idea of building blocks, little tiny, these little pixel building blocks. Okay, all right, let's get started. Okay, Alyssa, all right, so this is your sketch. Peanut, French fries, is that French fries? Spinach, watermelon, and blueberries. Okay, great. Yeah, if you can, you know, you have your sketch separately. If you can, combine it with your collection of JPEGs, you know. If you've put them together in a folder, or, you know, you can, in Adobe Acrobat, there's a way to just add in an extra image, you know, an extra image file. So you might want to work with that. So let's see here. Okay, yeah, so you've got a watermelon. Let's take a look here. 1, 2, 3. I would say of your watermelon photographs, and I love that you have, you know, 3 different choices here. It's a really important part of your character, so I think it's good that you've got a few different options here. It's a little hard to say. This one I would say maybe is the, well, it's hard to say. You know, you may want to, once we get into next week's project, experiment with all 3 of these when you build your character. And once we all learn layer mask next week, or you all, it's good to practice. And I think these could all potentially work, and you might want to see which one works the best, just in terms of the way it looks. Like this one has some good qualities. I'm noticing there's some really good detail in here, like with the highlights on the watermelon seeds. This one has some really interesting lights and darks here, which gives it some nice dimension. I also like that we can see an edge of the rind. It helps with the objects. I find that you show them as dimensional as possible. This one is a little flatter looking because it's right on. Can you see that? How it's like right on. We don't see any edge of the rind or anything like that. And sometimes that can really make your character look a little flat and not very full of life. So sometimes having a little bit more three-dimensional qualities can work too. And this one doesn't also have a lot of three-dimensional qualities either, but it also has some good detail. And I like kind of the form, you know, the crispness of the form. So you might want to experiment and see which one you like. Uh, and uh, and this is great. So this is your blueberries. These are, you know, so I'm actually viewing everybody's PDFs here in Bridge. I may go over to Adobe Acrobat if I need to. But in Bridge is a software I often will kind of, it's my landing screen, so to speak. When I have a folder of files, I download everybody's, whatever assignment is, I download them into a folder. And in Bridge, I can look at them, I can preview them, and I can also open them in another software from here. So if you don't have Bridge, it's not important for this class to have that. I just want to explain that's what I'm looking at. But what happens is I can actually sort of get an idea just by previewing the image here in your JPEG at what quality it is. I can't see the resolution, the size of the resolution, but I can actually sort of say, oh yeah, this looks pretty big. It opens, like if an image opens really small, I know that it's a small resolution image, but if it opens larger, I know it's higher resolution, and I can also do this little thing here. It's called the loop. And I can also just look in here and go, oh yeah, that looks great. And so here, looking even close up, I can see amazing detail in here, which is what we want. We don't want things to start looking fuzzy and pixelated when we zoom in a little bit, because you may want to, you know, use some of your objects in a larger way. For this particular selection, you have 2 choices here for blueberries. And everyone look at this. What would be the 2 best choices here if you wanted to use, there's 5 different blueberries here. Which one or ones would you choose if you wanted to create, let's say in this case, I think Alyssa's using this for an eye. Which one would you choose? Think about it. Okay, so if you said either of these two, these would be the correct choices here. Now, why is that? Is because you will be able to, all these three are covered in some way. This one's actually getting pretty close. You might be able to make a selection of this one, but I would, if I didn't have to, I wouldn't choose this one because they're all so close together. These are overlapping each other. That means I won't be able to get the full object. There'll be some part that's cut off, and so I won't get a really good result. But these two are nice. They're floating on their own. I can see both of them, so I could easily, you guys know now from selections that is an important part of it. So these would be really good choices right here. It's interesting too how I just noticed too with these blueberries is that they kind of look like eyes, don't they? Because they've got a little center in them. Okay, let's look at the rest. Yeah, I think this one could work too. Yeah, this has potential. We can see the whole thing, so that might be another one. It doesn't have quite as much dimension, lights and darks. Dimension. How do we create dimension in a photograph? So if you are not a photographer, well, I mean, almost everybody takes photographs these days, so I'm going to just assume we all are at some level. What you'll notice is that you can make an object look really flat by the lighting. You know, if it's a very even lighting, like let's say noon outside, if you take a picture of like an object oftentimes or a person, it'll really look very flat. So what, like if you're taking a picture of a person, what you might want to do is take that person into some shadows, like shade, and then you start getting more lights and darks, and it's a more beautiful and just better photograph. And you would do the same thing with objects. It's having this, like, looks to me like a stock photograph, which is a photograph taken by typically a professional photographer and sold to a stock photo site or commissioned to them, and then people might buy the photograph to use in their graphic design work. And so typically they're often photographed on these simple backgrounds. A lot of times objects will be, and they're, you know, they just are really, the lighting is great. They know what they're doing. And so this is a very, looks to me like that kind of photograph. And that reminds me about what I wanted to say before in my introduction. This class, I'm letting you guys just, anywhere you want to get a photograph is fine with me for this particular class. So you can just ignore all of the instructions about, you know, going to the library and just follow the instructions about, you know, your art director letting you know where to find the photographs. I have an announcement on the announcements page that you've probably already seen. And if you haven't, take a look at it because it explains in detail how I want you to approach choosing photographs, which is just the short answer is anywhere you want to get them as long as they're good quality. And so in future classes, you may have to actually really be a lot more careful about where you get your photographs, and, you know, they need to be maybe have copyright eligibility to be able to work with them. But I feel like in this class we're just learning about photographs. It's a foundational class, so I don't want you to get too hung up and too limited in what you choose. So just keep that in mind. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, that looks great too. Nice. So this is also great. Why? Because we've got some it's very detailed. It's very in focus. And it's got really good lights and darks. It's going to look very, you know, and we want our character to have that kind of sense of solidity that we get when we see that roundness that is created by a lot, like some good highlights on an object. Light, see there's some light here, there's some dark here. It gives the shape a lot of curves. It does have curves, but when you photograph it, you can either enhance that or you can really flatten it out. So in this particular photograph, so what you want to look for is a French fry here that you can select the entire one. And I see that probably this is the only one here. That's okay. That might be the one you want to work with. But you can see here that they're all sort of stacked together, so it would be impossible to get a really good selection from those. Well, that looks great. Nice job. This is good too. I'd probably say that, and I'm glad you, this is why I actually chose your project to start talking about this assignment, is because you had multiple photographs of the same object, and so I'm able to, you know, use this as a teaching moment. So this is a better photograph. Why? Because again, it has a lot more detail, and it also has this wonderful three-dimensional quality. And I would say this would be good in a pinch. And maybe it could work. I'm always surprised. Sometimes when students take a photograph that's not so great, sometimes it can look really good in the project. This one right here, this leaf has the most sort of three-dimensional qualities and textures and details, so this could work. But I would say that just off the bat that this is a better choice. Okay, thanks Alyssa for letting me use your assignment to, give a lot of general comments to the class, and let me know if you have any questions. But okay, so yes, this is good. You're good to go. You don't need to replace anything in here or make any changes for the assignment. Again, if you have multiple photographs of the same object and one works really well and one doesn't work so well, that's the way it's going to go. I would say you don't worry about getting more French fries at this point, but this potentially I could see maybe you need to replace this depending upon how it looks when you put it into your character. But don't worry about it now. Just, move on to milestone 3. Let's see here. So I think this is Garden Glitter Grace. And let's see, so you've got a flower, butterfly wings. So, I mentioned before butterflies are, maybe I didn't mention this, but this is a gray area for me because I love butterfly wings. But, technically they're not really an object because they're part of a living creature. So if you can find something else that operates like a butterfly wing, in your character, I already went through your photographs and I think you have a butterfly wing. But if there's something else that you can use that would mimic a butterfly wing, like think creatively. What could look like a butterfly wing? Like something that's sort of flat and fluttery, then maybe I might suggest working with that. Let's see, and you've got, let's see, shovels. That's great. Okay, so let's go through here. So this image here is a little bit small. This is, it's actually, I think this is a good photograph in the sense that it looks like the lighting is really good, but it's really small. And I notice like when it opens, as I mentioned before, when it opens here, I can tell it's a small photograph. It's probably like 200 pixels or 150 pixels. And I'd like to see this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to show you now in Google Images how to search. And I use Google Images to demonstrate, but because it's easy to, let's just go there. I'll show you. Okay, so everyone, this is another one of those, if you need some help searching for images, which I think it is hard to search for images. Maybe this will be useful to you. So I just typed in almond here, and I'm going to click on images here right in Google. Google Images has a pretty good search engine here. And then what I'm actually going to do here before I start looking at these images, I'm going to toggle a few of the tools in here. And the first thing I'm going to do is the size. So I'm going to like eliminate small sizes here, and I'm going to make sure that it's going to be a good size. Anything larger by 1024 by 768. Now this is, yeah, let's just do that. 1024 by 768. And then you can also go to type right in here. And there's different types here. So we don't want any clip art, line drawing, animated. We just want photos. So we're going to click that. Now when you do that, sometimes illustrations do still creep in. So it's not a guarantee, but it'll help eliminate it. Now you can just kind of go through here. You know for sure that all the images are going to be the correct size. Now you just want to go and like make sure to go through, make sure that you don't have an image that has, that's not going to work, like with watermarks, watermarks, or some of these are clearly, but this one looks like it would be a good image. So you can literally just go to that web page and go to the web page here and then download it. Or let's see, I think sometimes we can open image in a new tab. Sometimes, there we go. Now we can just, oh, and look at that. Okay, I'm glad we did that because this is actually a watermarked image, so we can't use that. The watermark was not clear. Now why can't we use that? It's because you'll see those watermarks when you go into, when you create your character. So, just keep looking through here, and, this actually could be, one maybe right in here, but there'll be one in here that you can find, that you can replace. Okay, so let's see. Same with this one. This is too small, so you want to replace that. You can do the same search. Oh, now this was actually coming up here bigger before. What's going on with that? I'm going to open this in Photoshop. Actually, this is a little bit of somehow Adobe Bridge was just sort of locked into the almond as the small image, and it was showing the other ones that way too. So this is a little bigger, which is better. I'd love to see if you can get a branch that has a little more dimension, a little more clarity. Uh, just a bigger image. Think of the three-dimensional qualities we looked at. I think that will help your character a lot if you do that. So you keep looking for branches. There'll be a lot out there. So this one I can already tell is a great image. So you can see I'm viewing at 100% in here, which means that this image is really big. And look at the beautiful detail on here. This will be a wonderful choice for your character. Let's see here. This one also looks to me like, yeah, that's a great image. Nice. And again, this is actually a good image. So the other thing with butterfly wings that I've noticed from working with students in the past is butterfly wings are so amazing with their pattern, their texture, that they end up being a little bit flat in the design. So again, if you can brainstorm something else that might look like a butterfly wing, or a wing, any type of wing, like an object, that might be a great thing to work on. Let's see, this image here, I'm just gonna, yeah, so is this is probably going to be a good image right in here. I'm just looking at the edges here. Could be a little hard in this one, because of the lights and darks. There's not a lot of Can you see this? This is almost the same color, or it is the same color as the background. So as you know from selections, that would make it hard to select. So this might be a good choice right in here. But I definitely think this is a nice large image. This is terrific too. Wonderful image. Look at the beautiful detail on here, It's almost like you can reach out and touch it. So great. Okay, so just a few small changes in your character, your photographs, but I think you're on the right track here. Dries. All right, so I think if I remember correctly, you were not able to submit your assignment for the critique last week. So I'm glad you were able to submit it now, and so we can talk a little bit more about your character design. Uh, Overall, I think it looks good. I have just a few things I'd like you to change here. The first is just make sure if you're using facial features here, like you've got something for your nose, you've got something for your mouth, what about the eyes? You've drawn them in, but I don't know what the object is for this. So think about that. You're going to want to include that in your photographic collection. You also want to just change your character sketch here to indicate what that is. Just remember you don't necessarily have to have facial features if you hopefully you reviewed last week's group critique, so you're up to speed on what we talked about last week in the character critique in Milestone 1 Task 3. So if you haven't yet, do check that out. It'll be really useful because we sort of created a foundation for character design. But one of the things we talked about is, do you need to have features on your character? The answer is you don't, but you can. But if you do, you want to make sure to have objects for each part. The other thing we talked about is using pizzas, and I really think I'm not going to say don't do it because you maybe really have your heart set on using a pizza or a pizza slice, but in general, they don't work in the character design, and you're sort of setting yourself up for a challenge. And we talked about why last week. So I'd love if you could change this out for something else. Like you're using Flippin' Food Fred or Fran, one of those two, and there are so many things you can replace here for a body with food shapes, like just big round things, that will look so great, like oranges or apples or lemon, maybe not a lemon, but different types of melons and just all kinds of things. So maybe something else that's not a fruit or vegetable that's food related. So keep experimenting with that part. So let's take a look at your photographs here. Okay, for some reason your photographs got placed onto a big white background. I'm not really sure why, but they look good. I think the banana looks good, and I think I've looked at the cheese and the hat. They look good too. Let's look at the cherries close up. This one I think is a lot better than this one. This one here, and why? Because just what we've talked about, it's very three-dimensional, has a lot of good highlights on it, so that's a good choice. I think this lemon looks good too. And this pasta, so this pasta, I think this is probably a little bit, I think it's, can you see it's like very lacking in detail. So if you can keep looking, go to Google Images just like we did, do a search and see if you can find something that has more lights and darks, you know, that's really a little more clear. This is getting there, and I love the overall shape, but it's a little, it looks kind of like all the parts are sort of blending together. So see if you can find something with a little more crispness and contrast. That will be a lot better in your uh, overall in your design, because this is going to be an important part. It's going to be, I think, your arms. Yeah, I think this looks good too. And I don't know why there's so much white space here. We've talked about the pizza. All right, so those are some of the things I'd like you to work on. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Yes, I agree with you that getting photographs to match your design and also getting an image with the right perspective, I agree that that is something. And that's, I want to emphasize too that you know, you will most likely everybody will have to make changes in your photographic collection. As you go through, you'll start building your character and you'll say, this doesn't really work. Now that I've done a little bit of searching for photographs, I bet I can find something better. So, you know, just know that we're just like having a starting point right now, and, you know, feel free to make changes. We're just trying to learn about photographs for this assignment, get some potential ones, get every object matched up with a photograph, and then next week, you know, you'll see as it goes. And great, I love that you chose a lot of different photographs. That's wonderful. I just have a couple questions here about your character. I think we talked last week about you have a zucchini for the head. I'm not 100% sure how you're making these features, so if you have ideas for them, you know, objects that you're going to use to create these features, put them in here, revise your sketch for this week, or just, you know, revise the head without those features. That's fine with me too. Okay, you've got lettuce for the body. What are these arms being made out of? Are they also butternut squash? Indicate that on your sketch, if possible. And okay, good. Let's move forward here and look at what you've got. Oh yeah, that's nice. Very good. Croissant. Ooh, that's very nice too. Beautiful three-dimensional quality, uh, and very clear in focus. It's nice too. This is good, and this is better, probably three-dimensionally. So this is really, you know, what's great about, and this could really work in your design. What's really good about this one is it's very clear, it's going to be easy to select, but it's not very three-dimensional. Can you see it sort of got, it doesn't have as much highlight as we might want, whereas this one, the lighting is really coming from the side. The only thing about this one is it may be harder to find. Maybe this one right here. You know, in terms of finding a whole squash, because they're all kind of like on top of each other. Do you know what I mean? Let's just make this a little smaller. This one is really great. I could see this one because you can select the whole thing. It's got really nice, you can see all the beautiful curves because of the lights and darks on it. That's a wonderful one. And this one's good too, but I think I don't see any here that you could select, you know, on the whole selection. This is getting close, but unfortunately it's a little cut off by the edge of that basket, you know. This one right here, let me just adjust my view here so we can see the whole image. I'm able to see it, but my recording screen's not. So this is actually a beautiful image, but doesn't look like the whole lettuce is here to select. Although I don't know if you need the whole lettuce because of the way you're working with it. This is also good quality. Again, you know, it looks like let's go, let's go back to your beginning sketch here. So it looks like you want to have at least one edge here of the lettuce, right? Like maybe maybe the watermelon is going to cover this side, and this is going to be covered by the arms and legs. And so you'll need to have one edge, clean edge of the lettuce, right? because the arm is going to be behind it. So that's what I guess what you're going to be looking for. So potentially this one might work. This one potentially could work too. You could select along this edge and get a beautiful kind of edge of the lettuce. So that's probably your choice. And this one probably not, because I don't really see a lettuce edge that you could select. This is good too. Nice. This one probably not, because it's a beautiful image, but it has the flower covering part of it. And I don't remember what this is going to be for, but yeah, you probably could select an olive from this if that's what you're looking for. And that's it. Okay. All right. I think just a few suggestions here, but you're on the right track. Let's see here. You have, let's see, gumdrops, red vine, um, the lollipop, marshmallow, such lollipops. Okay, rock candy, candy, cane. Something I mentioned a little bit last week in the group critique, but something you may find, and it's okay to leave it this way for now, but one thing you may find, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, is when you start building your character, you may find that having different objects for arms and legs makes your character not quite read as a character, and because of how we look at living beings, like if you think of animals or people, generally arms and legs are the same, relatively the same, in terms of what they look like. It's a symmetry, and so when we try to get all of our random objects looking like a character, sometimes having symmetry, or oftentimes having symmetry, makes it look more like a character. So you may find later on that you want to make both of your arms out of one of these, and you can actually use the same object and just duplicate it, or you can, find two objects that look relatively the same, like two different photographs. So, just keep that in mind as you move forward. Okay, that looks good. Nice. That looks great. So this marshmallow is actually a really pretty good photograph in terms of it's big and it's very clear. It doesn't have a lot of roundness to it. I'm wondering, now it may be hard to find because marshmallows are white and they tend to be sort of formless, but let's go to Google Images and see if we can find something. The same settings as before, photograph, larger than, and first of all, I typed in marshmallow, and there were so many different colored marshmallows, and you have a white marshmallow, so I added that so I could just maybe narrow it down. And then if you look through here, you can sort of start seeing, now I don't think this is the orientation you want, but just to kind of, when it looks like it's probably watermarked as well, but let's just open this one, and oh, it looks like it's licensed too, but the reason why I pulled this one is because it has more three-dimensional. You can really see the roundness of it, and that will make it work better as a character element. So in this one here too, this one's, you sort of kind of look, so this one's still a little flat, so we might have to go through a few, maybe we won't be able to get, this one's pretty good too, might not be just as fluffy as you want it to be. There was something maybe up here. Maybe this one? Maybe not. It's kind of a little lumpy, isn't it? So anyhow, you may want to go through here and just kind of look around a little more to see, and maybe you will end up keeping the one you have as the best one. Sometimes we can't always find, one better. But if you can, just think about, again, trying to find, sometimes what we might try to do here is also type in single white marshmallows. Sometimes that gives us, oh yeah, so maybe that's gets just one, and it's not, yeah, this isn't super great. Okay, but anyhow, that's what I may try to do with that one, is keep looking a little more. So same with this image. It's a pretty good image. It still is a little bit, flat in the sense that it doesn't quite have um, a lot of dimension in it. Also has some kind of strange writing on it. Yeah, you know, I think this is also watermarked. I see some writing on it, so I might keep looking for this one. Um, yeah, this one's okay too. It's a little, again, it's a little flat, doesn't have a lot of dimension. Uh, this one's a great image. I really love this one. It's very clear and crisp. A lot of details, so that would work really well. And something to keep in mind too, I don't know if you have all of the different parts represented. Looks like you wanted a candy cane, which is missing. You know, a candy cane actually could be a really terrific 2 legs. So you might even just want to replace this right now. Rock candies, based on my experience of other students working with this element, it can be a little hard to find a good quality rock candy image. So you may just want to switch to candy canes because there's a ton of good candy canes out there, and then just re-sketch your character right now to be 2 candy cane legs. You know, that could be a good idea. Um, Something else you might want to, think about too. I don't know if, did you have gumdrops in there? I don't remember seeing those. But you might just want to use, instead of adding elements onto the face, you may just want to work with this element here of the lollipop. That's already a lot of detail and it will read as a head. So you may want to do a little work tweaking of your character and then, keep working with your photographs just a little bit more based on what we talked about. Yes, I know. It's so hard to choose between all the different sketches. Sometimes we have so many great ideas. Well, you can just hold on to the other idea and, maybe what I always suggest to people near the end of class is, if you like doing this project at the end of class and you really loved the different Photoshop techniques that we used, then build more characters. It'd be really fun to have a whole bunch of different characters in your portfolio. When you gets time for you to create a portfolio, you can have like again a whole series of them. Okay, so here's your character. Great. So yeah, so this is actually, so I can tell this was probably a good image to begin with, but it looks like somebody downsampled it quite a lot. By downsampling, I mean they reduced the file size, and so it gets a little pixelated. So I'd keep searching, use the technique that we did in Google Images. Also try to find one that's not cut off. I think let's see, in your design, it may not matter so much if it's cut off on one end, right? Because you could tuck it behind this element, but you want one side to be free so that we can see the whole thing. So I keep looking for that one. That looks good. That looks good. Yeah, this image, I think, I don't know what's happening down here. It's almost like something got pulled out of in the digital image. It looks like a lot of it's kind of missing. So I might keep looking here. Look for a different one. This one could be problematic. Uh, that one looks good. Okay. All right. So those are my suggestions. Keep looking for a couple of different photographs here. Again, keep in mind, duplicates. Try to maybe get it's good, especially with the elements that are really crucial for your character design to uh, and I also see some elements that are missing here, like broken glasses. Is that some, if you don't want to go ahead with any of these, and this is true for everybody, if you have mentally revised your design at some point, please do revise it. Take out your sketch, get an eraser out or add some more, whatever you're doing with it. If you've made changes to it, then just do those changes so that when I come to look at it, I won't say, oh, you're missing something. Um, or why doesn't that object have a photograph? All right. Okay. I think this is going to look great when it's done. David, let's see here. Plastic cups, baseball bat, cardboard tube, rusty nail, books, tree branch, beach balls. Okay, good. You know, if you can, if it's possible, I think I've mentioned to you last week, I'm still having a little trouble making out your character design because some of the lines are getting lost. This can happen at a number of different stages of documenting a sketch. It could be when you photograph it, maybe maybe your camera settings may have lost some of these lines, or maybe you took it into Photoshop and lost some of these lines, or if you scanned it, maybe your contrast was set too high or too low. So you may want to tweak the settings here just to kind of get it a little bit more clear, so we can see everything. It's also a good idea to, like, uh, even to take and draw an arrow from these, where these are to point to them. That will really help. So I'm not 100% sure where everything is. Like, is this a baseball bat? Is this a baseball bat? I think it is, isn't it? And this is the beach ball, I think. Anyhow, it'll help me understand what you're doing and what the photographs you've chosen. Okay, so let's look at these. Yes, this looks good. Nice, nice choice. That looks pretty good too. This one is a little wee fuzzy, even from a distance. I think it's okay, but if you can find something that's a little clearer in focus, I think that could be really helpful. Um, like this wood grain seems a little muffled and kind of flat looking. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty good too. There's a watermark on this one that's covering this element here. If you can find something without a watermark, that would be awesome. Watermarks are just, you can sometimes get rid of them in Photoshop, but sometimes it's not possible. So this looks good too. This looks good. Yeah, I think this looks good too. These look good. In this one, so this is going to be a piece of wood that you're selecting from here. You've got one piece of wood. This one seems to be the most likely candidate right here because it's in sort of in focus, and it's also the one that's on top, so we can select it all. But it has all of these different like shadows on it. So when you do select it, it's going to not look quite like a piece of wood. So I'd keep looking. There's going to be a lot of wood out there that people have photographed. So I might keep looking for something a little better. This looks great. Oh, I think we saw that already. Okay, so just a few changes in here. Okay, McKay. Oh, yes. So yeah, trouble finding it does take some time, doesn't it? Here is your character. You've got headphones, speaker cable, microphone, speaker and microphone stands. Okay. All right. So for the hair, yeah, so if you can, I would keep looking maybe a little bit more. Oh, let's see here what you have here. Well, potentially, it might be easier to try to find something that looks like this configuration or is more of a single strand. I don't know, this could work. You might want to possibly get a few more options for this one. Just throw them in to your collection so that you've got more choices. I do like how large these pieces are at the end. I think that will work well. I just want to say cables are very challenging to work with based on my experience with other students. There's a few reasons for that. One is that the cable itself, when you select it, it won't look very three-dimensional because it's such a thin element, and so it doesn't necessarily read very strongly in a character. So if you look for cables, when you look for cables, look for a very thick cable. The thicker you can, the better, because you want to see that roundness of the character. So you may, if you feel free to just use any kind of cable you want if you can't find one exactly for, that's this specific type of cable. I'm not sure why my Acrobat is doing that message. This looks good. Yeah, this is great too. And again, I'm not quite sure why it's doing this. So I might keep looking a little bit more here for, um, a single or like a speaker stand that is a little more like I think that this is not quite clear enough, and photographed clearly enough, like in terms of the lighting and the quality of the photograph. So keep looking at, use Google Images, see if you can find something a little bit better. Uh, let's just zoom out a little bit here. So yeah, I think I like the way we're starting to see the side of the speaker, which I think is really key for the speaker, so that you see that three-dimensional quality, the side and the front, so it's not just flat on. So I think this one could work. Um, I might experiment with finding a few more just to throw into your collection, because I'm a little concerned about how, like, we're looking up at it, which might be maybe a little hard to put into the character, the way let's look at the sketch again here. It'd be nice to sort of see more of the bottom of it as well. It seems like we're sort of getting a little bit of that maybe cut off a little bit. So I might kind of experiment with that. This one, getting there. I like how like it's all kind of tied together and it's a little more three-dimensional. It's a little bit kind of busy in here, with the different parts of it. Um, Now, and the text here, now that is something we may be able to remove later on in Photoshop, but I might look for that, just keep experimenting, see if you can find some other elements for that, to throw in your collection, some different options, because I'm not 100% sure that will work either. It's a challenging one, again, those cables. So, if while you're in the process of looking for photographs for your cables this week, if you think of something else that could work for hair, um, or if you decide not to have hair, that's also fine. But feel free to kind of go to another plan with the speaker cables if that's something that seems possible. I'm sorry to hear about your computer having all of the windows open. Yeah, yeah, we definitely will be taxing computers in Photoshop work. It's just the nature of having Photoshop. Photoshop takes a lot of juice for your computer. So if possible, this is something I do, is I really try to, because my computer's getting on in years too, and I like to kind of push them as far as they go before I get a new one, because I'm thrifty and I don't like to waste things. But yeah, closing software, like it's amazing how right now I have so much open on my computer that I could be closing, including Photoshop. I'm not using Photoshop for this critique, and yet I have it open because I was working in it earlier. And so closing that, closing any, you know, uh, even having like in your browser, for example, I'm using Chrome and I've got a lot of tabs open and like a lot of windows open, and having the more windows you have open, the more it taxes your system. So if you can close down whatever tabs you don't need. Also, restarting your computer can help, you know, like because it can sort of reset all the memory on your computer. So that's also another option when you find that your computer's not working well. But definitely closing any software, even if you have like email open, like I have an email client. It's, I think, Apple email or something like that. It takes a lot of memory. So yeah, okay. Anyhow, okay, let's go to what you've been working on. Okay, is this Terrible Toys Todd? Or Garbage Dump Dan? Not 100% sure. So you've got a tire here, a headlight, a tail light. Um, I'd love to sort of know a little bit more about some of these other elements. It looks like maybe some of the... I would redraw this sketch, to be honest. I don't think it really is as good a sketch as you could create, even without being a good drawer. you know, like things like just like slowing down a little bit, making sure to label everything. I'm not really sure what this element is or what's happening along the sides here. You know, find a new piece of paper and just, you know, when we're working with clients or our art director, it would be they that you can sell an idea so much better if you have um, a good presentation. So I'm just going to talk. So and when I grade your work too, I'll be actually looking at your sketch to try to identify the different photographs you've added and how they relate. So if I can't figure that out, it really makes it hard to evaluate what the work you've done. And especially the more, you know, everybody's putting in a lot of work searching for things. So yeah, anyhow, so this looks good. This element here is a little bit hard to read. It's a little blurry. I would keep looking for something here. You see all the pixelation that's happening in here. So keep looking for something that might be maybe a little simpler, a little bit clearer. This is a great image. Look at the difference. Can you see how clear this is? It's really wonderful. And okay, yeah, this looks like a good image. I don't remember now where. Well, it's a little blurry. Of course, the larger you make something, I am kind of intentionally kind of zooming in so that I can see, you know, what so I'm emphasizing the blurriness, but maybe you could find something a little bit better for this one. This is a great image. This is too blurry. This is really got a lot of graphics on it, and so I would try to find something without graphics. Uh, and maybe this wouldn't be like, so this is like one of those things you hang in your car, which I think it'll all have graphics. I don't think you're going to find something that doesn't have a lot of graphics. So this might be something to replace in your sketch because we want to avoid objects that have a lot of graphics because then we can't see the object itself because the graphics sort of take over and flatten it. So maybe find something else here. So you've got a little bit, I'd like you to, you know, as I've said, go back a little bit and work on your sketch to clarify it, make any changes to your photographs to go along with it, and then you'll be in good shape for milestone 3. So in your design, I talked a little bit last week about your design. One of the things that I may or may not have mentioned is in that this design, I think it would really help maybe if you added some arms to your design to start, you know, really building your character just a little bit more. It's great that you have legs, but arms will also really help. I'm is I'm also not quite sure how the banana fits in. It's like, is it a halo that's floating on top? Is it going to be hair? You might want to work on this sketch just a little bit more to clarify that element. Um, yeah, anyhow, let's take a look here at what you have. So zoom in here a little bit more. Okay, all right, yeah, I think that this bucket looks pretty good. Let's go back here with your sketch, see how that's going to fit together. So it looks like when you've drawn it here, you've sort of drawn it more face on, whereas your bucket here in the photograph is like where you're going to be seeing more of the top, like looking in. So that's something to think about, like how will that work with your face? How will it work with this banana idea on top? You know, like so your face is going to be here, your arms are going to come out. So it's maybe going to look a little different, but that's okay. Um, so we haven't looked through all of your images yet. You may have more bucket images, but you may want to include some more bucket images. I'm a little concerned that it may be a little hard to select here in Photoshop because Photoshop, as we know now, Photoshop, when you select elements from their background, that it can be, if you have a background that has a lot of detail or it's very similar in value, it can be hard to select. So you may not get this round handle Whereas I think the down here will be pretty easy to select. And I love the detail, you know, the kind of the rustiness of the bucket. I think it has a lot of character and potential. Um, this is the tangerine. Okay, the tangerine mouth or the pickle nose. Okay. And okay, yeah, I think these will be good. This one, so once I zoom in, you can see how we lose a lot of detail here. So when you photograph something, it's good to get a little closer to the object when you photograph it, and you know, just really get a lot of detail in there. And you know, when you try to do your own photographs, which is great if you're, you know, comfortable doing that, but don't hesitate as we move through the assignment if you know, to get photographs just from the internet, because sometimes, I mean, you get a lot more. I think this will be pretty good. Yeah, that I think would be pretty good here. But you sometimes you have more options. That looks good too. I think that's a good image. Okay, so something else. So in addition to maybe having maybe some arms here and maybe a few more bucket images, something else you may consider too is potentially having a head here. It almost seems like that's what this banana is trying to be, as a head. I might consider finding something that will be a head so that you can move these objects onto a head, or sometimes having the torso be your head, like to be double duty, like the head and the torso are combined, can sometimes be a little harder to make a character from. So you may want to be flexible with that and maybe play around with that idea a little bit more. Okay, so just a few things here to keep working with. Okay, Dimitri, all right, so this looks like a good image. Something that we're going to learn to do, I think in milestone 5, I think, is how to, you know, remove unwanted elements from our objects, and I can definitely see removing this text because I think it's a little distracting, maybe even here. But otherwise, and there's sort of a limit to what you can remove in photographs, which we'll sort of test out later on in the class. Like remove, sort of heal, like you remove and heal a photograph. And I think that this could be done. So I like that image. I think it could work well. I think this is good too. Yeah, this is potentially good. It's a little detailed. There's a lot of detail on it, which could work, you know, with a guitar. Like guitars sometimes can be a little flat looking, and so they don't, and they have a lot of detail. So sometimes they are hard to move, like to merge into a character. So we'll see. Uh, Same with this one. This has a lot of detail if it's possible. You know what I mean? Like all of this detail in here, which again will be a little hard to merge into the character. This is good. Nice. So so this drum you've got, so I might reconsider this element right in here, the guitars for arms, because I just think they're always a little challenging. I do think maybe I mentioned that to you when we looked at the sketches. Speakers, drum. Oh, I see. So this is going to be for your mouth, maybe? The keyboard? Let's see here. Oh, here's your speaker. Yeah, I think that's nice. I like how simple it is. Mm. So, this element in here, be flexible with adding a keyboard. It's, and if you can, it'd be good to maybe, well, this could work. It's going to be hard to select all of this because it's sort of like what you're, instead of the whole, it's easier to select a whole object than to select bits and pieces from an object, if you know what I mean. Like, so you're going to be sort of taking and like taking a keyboard and putting it in here. So yeah, be flexible with that. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. Um, that's okay. That's the way. But I would definitely probably maybe think about a different arm for up here rather than the guitar. Just think about something else that maybe would be like arm-like and have a little more dimension. Okay, all right, good job. I think you're heading in the right direction. Shelby, all right, garden glitter, Gracer Glen. And let's see, flower pot, tulip vine, picket fence, water hose, shovel, and garden rake. So like previously I mentioned, you may find it's easier to make a character if you create symmetry with your arms and legs. So just something to think about. Um, Okay, garden rake. Yeah, so with this garden rake, maybe find a few more garden rakes. Something that has maybe a little more, just a little more dimension here. Can you see how there's not any, like this is just sort of a flat black color? If you can find something that has more lights and darks on it in all parts, that I think could really help your character. So again, I noticed you only have 5 photographs here. Maybe have some duplicates, a few different garden rakes. I think this looks good. This looks great. This one here, what is this going to be? Notice that there's a lot of parts that are cut off here, and maybe that won't matter. What do you got here? Oh, I see. Okay, garden hose. Yeah, see, can you see all the grass that's covering? It's going to be impossible to get a clean selection here. So keep experimenting. It's going to be also hard. I would skip getting water out of the hose, as cute as that would be. It's because water is really hard to select. And you can notice, see, it's cut off here. I wouldn't be able to do it. So I would just find a garden hose, one that you can really select easily and cleanly. Okay, this could work. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. You might want to sort of end it here, but that's a possibility here. Okay, so just maybe get some more duplicates, replacements for what I've suggested.